Steve Shah, I'm SVP of Product, and I am joined today by Ken Ross, who is Head of Product for all of our cloud and security. So you've built a cloud from scratch, haven't you? That is exactly what you've done over the last 4 years.
We have. We introduced it about 3.5 years ago. A lot of initial interest and a growing interest from some of the larger customers and enterprises. Everybody has a cloud strategy these days. It's really just a question of at what point do you actually jump into this for automations?
Absolutely. Now, a common thing that I think you and I are both starting to hear are questions around scale. As everyone starts really thinking about sort of how their automations scale and where it goes and how big it gets, the question that comes up is, will cloud help me get there? How have you been answering this question and what have you seen?
Yeah, so I think everybody understands the value of cloud, particularly around some of the cost benefits, but really the speed of being able to actually implement is a big factor. And a lot of the customers have had some initial success, and then they've started to have some potential challenges to get momentum and initiatives going beyond that. And we've seen a couple of customers. I'll actually talk about the NHS in the UK. Good initial success with one of their main hospital trusts, and now they're starting to push it out as a central COE to all of the other trusts. There's 200 of them. So they really recognize the cloud as a way of these other trusts. They have the conversation, they build up some interest. Those other individuals and businesses can immediately jump on. They don't have to wait weeks or even months for the infrastructure to get provisioned. So they can just jump onto the environment, start building bots. So it helps the momentum of these initiatives just to keep that going. And we've seen well over 10% faster growth on cloud than we have with customers that are deploying on-prem.
That's really cool. I mean, one of the fun stats that we just shared was that we just crossed 50 million bots run this year. Month to month, about how many bots get executed on our cloud now?
It's a little over 7 million, and that's really 300,000 every single day. So
wow,
we're kind of staggered by the numbers, and it's really picked up over the last 18 months, and larger organizations getting on board. And one of the things that we've been talking about is seamless updates. It's really a way for customers to be able to stay on the latest technology, and also we've put some hooks in there so that they can control the updates and who can use them. And particularly if you're larger and you're in a regulated environment, it helps with some of those controls and approvals and reviews as well.
I would imagine that this also helps with really looking at new use cases that you can pursue because you're on the latest version. So new capabilities, new tools, that opens up all kinds of new doors for you. You touched on something really interesting, and that is security. This is something that I hear all the time. I think you hear it too. We talk to folks who are in regulated industries, finance, banking, healthcare. You mentioned NHS. That privacy is a really big deal for them, as it should be. When you start getting into security in cloud, the two seem to be at odds with one another, because how can anything that is being shared also be secure? What have you done to really help make sure that that environment is as secure as it needs to be?
Over the last 12 months, we've really beefed up a lot of our security compliance. And instead of that just being our IT organization and our cloud organization, it's now end-to-end across the whole software development lifecycle. So that really gives you more confidence about that software and the updates that we're doing. I think the second thing is that we have high trust certification, which is very well recognized across the industry. But we've also doubled down on that and made sure that the HIPAA controls that are relevant there are in good shape as well. They're completely covered. So both of these things help with some of that confidence. Another element to this is customers like the fact that we're using some of the latest techniques, AI ops techniques, to actually monitor the environment with our SIEM. And it really, because we're cloud native, deployed on clusters, there's a level of additional resiliency, and we can get auto detection of any unrecognizable behavior. Go in there. If it were to be a bad actor, we can kill that process. There's a momentary blip in the service. Everything continues to run. So that resiliency is really a key factor, particularly if you're putting business critical automations in place You need that resiliency, and you want the comfort that that continues to run.
So Ken, this is really cool because I think one of the challenges that I remember facing back in my youth, being an IT guy, was rolling out patches was always difficult. And it makes me think about events like, I think was it
Log4j, the zero-day attack. Yeah.
So Log4j comes out and it's making big news. This is big, scary stuff because you could now get a remote attacker that could bypass a bunch of security. And we needed to get a patch out there quickly. Now, if you were on premise, you needed to wait for us to release patches because we had to do a bunch of testing for a bunch of different scenarios. But the cloud, you guys rolled out the patch much faster. What was the story around that?
So the SecOps team are constantly monitoring. They saw what was happening with the attacks coming in. They changed the firewall rules and did a patch on there within 4 hours. None of that attack got into our systems. And then subsequent to that, we notified the customers that there was no vulnerabilities, but we still, for abundance of caution, did patches very quickly on the cloud, far faster than we could roll out to the on-prem customers.
That is awesome. And I think that has a profound impact because it was about that same time we were seeing big spikes in state-sponsored attacks. So a lot more scanning that was happening. Yeah. And those state-sponsored attacks are much, much more involved. So for us to be able to protect against that, I think speaks volumes to the power of the cloud.
Nothing got through even the first level in terms of attacks.
I can't imagine having done that on premise. The cloud is definitely the way to do it.
Yeah.
What about staying on that latest version? When you roll out changes, the thing that always makes me nervous is there's a new change that comes up. When new changes come up, I usually like testing those changes before we roll them out. How have you handled the whole rollout process to make sure that we're not blowing up everyone's cloud every time we do a new version and an update?
Yeah, we've done a few things, and I think keeping on the latest updates is clearly one of the things that becomes very important for the automations. Things like document automation, model-driven. You want to be using the latest model to make sure that everything's accurate. So we've done a few things. We've beefed up the policies around the bot agent deployments. So those are all automated, which makes it easier to accept the new changes, but now you don't necessarily have to do them every time we do a quarterly release. We've also introduced the sandbox so that you can do sanity testing 3 to 4 weeks in advance of the release. So as a customer, I can have confidence with some basic sanity tests that there's nothing wrong with the updates that we're pushing out. We're using seamless updates against command packages, which is the core functionality in the actual bots themselves, where we can release those without a maintenance window, and the customer gets the control over which developers can actually use them and when. So maybe as a COE, you can put some governance controls in place, test those out, make sure that they're solid, and then start moving them out to the organization and determine which packages you can actually get access to. So a lot of controls there so that you've got the right governance pieces in place. Early on, we got a lot of interest from customers. They were leveraging our cloud to develop the bots and to manage them, but they were still running the automations on-prem and very conscious of keeping the data that they were automating on their own infrastructure. That's changed, and it's changed for 2 reasons. One is they've become more comfortable with their business data actually appearing on our cloud, albeit temporarily. It's just for an automation. You're not using it to store it. But they're also getting comfortable because really the breadth of solutions that we've got now actually make it much more powerful if you are comfortable with doing that, and that's what's driving it. It's the solutions and the intelligent apps are driving that level of comfort.
When you say comfort, does that mean security? What does that mean exactly?
A lot of it's the security, yeah. With the customers that have regulatory environments, they want to dig into how we're actually implementing the security. So they want to see the security controls at every layer. They like the fact that we've got the SOC in place and the AI ops approach to being able to automatically detect if there's any unusual behavior and being able to drill into that. And the compliance piece and solidifying the compliances end to end across the whole development environment for the ISO certification, and then also the high trust certification and beefing that up from a HIPAA perspective for the healthcare industry. Those things make everybody much more comfortable.
So Ken, thank you so much for an awesome conversation. Really enjoyed this. And Thank you for joining us today.